In this video, we'll move our JavaScript code to an external file and build the sleep cycle calculation. We'll work with the data object to figure out when to wake up. So this is where we left off in the previous video. And so notice that I have all my JavaScript written inside the HTML file inside a script tag. And this is okay, but then this can get long and we may want to further modularize our application, have multiple different files. So it's generally considered a better practice that rather than writing your JavaScript inside an HTML file, move it to its own dedicated file. So let us do that. Let's go create a new file. We're going to call this one index.js. And let's grab this code and drop it inside the index.js file. And we're going to go here and keep this tag, but we're going to tell it that, hey, you got to get linked to this file that we have created. So the way you do that is to provide a src for source attribute, and then you provide the address of the relative path to the other file, so index.js. Okay, let's save all of this, refresh our browser, click on calculate, and just make sure that everything still works, which is great. So now what we're going to do, we're going to come and focus on this JavaScript file for a while. I'm going to open the terminal, and so we can also run a JavaScript file outside of a browser using Node. So make sure that Node is installed. And then we can go and try to run this code and see what happens. So node index.js. Now, what will happen if you try to run this is that you're going to get an error, and it's going to tell you that it doesn't know what document is. It says a reference error, document is not defined. And this is a good teaching moment because document is a special object that is only available to you inside the browser. And that kind of makes sense because it refers to this page when it is rendered and loaded inside the browser. If you're outside of the browser, you're going to be using Node to run your code, then you will not have access to things that are specific to the browser, and that includes things like the document as well as the window. So we're not going to be able to use these things. On the other hand, there's certain things that Node makes available to us in the runtime. For example, we can access the file system, the operating system, and these are not available to us when we run the code in the browser. So for now, what I want to do is to simplify this code. So let's take all of this out. We can leave the console log because console, it's an object that exists both in the browser and through the runtime environment that Node makes available to us. And for most part, both of them behave the same. So we can run this, and you're going to see that boo is printed to the terminal. So if you're using Node to run your JavaScript, then console basically prints things to the terminal. Whereas if it's being executed inside the browser, console actually is the console in the browser. Okay. So we want to work with the idea of calculating sleep cycles. So the first thing we need is to figure out what time is it right now. And in JavaScript, we can do that with the data object. So let's go and say const now, new date, and then print this now variable. So let's run it one more time, and you can see that it is printing out the date and time. And this is formatted in a particular way. This is in the UTC time zone. And if we want to change this to get printed and adjusted to our local time zone and to the way that is conventionally date and time expressed in our local environment, we can call a method on now that's called toLocalString. And so save this, run this one more time, and now you're going to see that I've got the date and time as it is typically being printed in United States. So if like I was in a different place and I still wanted to see this in the way that we express date and time, I could be explicit about it and provide an argument here and say that, hey, I'm looking for US, and I want the time to be expressed in English, so en-us, and this would do the same thing for me. What's more so, what I can do is, if I'm just interested in time, which is what I am interested in, I can provide a second argument here, and here you can provide like the time style. You can, there are a bunch of different options, so I'm going to go with short. So let's save this, run it again, and now I only see the time, and that's what I'm interested in. So I'm not going to explain every little bit of a code that we are looking at in here, because my assumption is that you have gone through the some of the prerequisites that is specified on the lecture notes from the Quick JavaScript Coursebook, and so you have seen some of the stuff that's going to come up in the code that we see here. And even if you didn't have time to exactly do that, given your experience and background, which this is not your first programming class, it's probably the second or third one, and you might have some experience in Java, C++, or Python, most of what you're going to see here should feel familiar to you. There are going to be some syntactical differences, but nothing should be too foreign to you. Like here, you must have seen new keyword and how you use it to instantiate a class and create an object, and how you use the dot operator to call different operations on objects. All right. Now let's go and work through the logic, the algorithm of our application. So what we want to do is to calculate and make some suggestions to the user as to when to set their alarm. And the idea is something like this. You want to go to bed, you're going to account for something like 14 minutes, because that's the average time a person is going to fall asleep. So imagine it takes you about 14 minutes to fall asleep, and then we're going to give you 6 cycles, each would be 90 minutes. And so the idea is that if you want to wake up, it's best that you set your alarm at the end of a cycle, and it's still better if you get about 5-6 sleep cycles so that you feel really rested and refreshed. So let's go and do that. We can go and try to let's rename this variable, and I'm going to rename it to fall asleep time. What we will do is we want to add 14 minutes to it. So this is how I'm going to do it. This object is coming with a bunch of setter and getter operations. So I'm going to say dot set time, and then inside of it I'm going to say let's get whatever the well, actually I'm going to just set the minute. So set minute, and I'm going to get the minute, so whatever its minute is, and I add 14 to it. And this setter method will take care of edge cases, like if this 14 extra would go over 60, so it has to add like to the hour, or even to account for, you know, going to the next day. So all of that will be taken care of. And then we can go and print this out. So if we do that and run this, oops, okay, I have forgot to add an S at the end of it. There we go. Okay, so this is like if I go to bed right now, supposedly this is the time that I'm gonna fall asleep. Okay, let's clear the terminal. Let's give us a little bit more room. And now the next thing I want to do is to calculate maybe the first cycle. So let's copy this and try to make use of it. Let's go and call this like WakeUp time. And I'm gonna set this to be the same as fall asleep time. So I'll use the value of fall asleep time to instantiate a new object, and then I add 90 minutes to this, because each sleep cycle is about 90 minutes, right? And so what we can do here also, maybe we can grab this, store it in a string, like const WakeUp time a string. Right, and here we can go and say sleep cycle #1 is, and then we can print this. All right, let's run this and see if it works. Great. So if I go to bed now, this is when I'm gonna fall asleep, and then the first sleep cycle would be at this time. And now I want to calculate 6 of this, and so that means I'm going to need to repeat this 6 times. And so typically when you want to do something like this, you use a for loop, right? So let's go and do that. For let I is 0, and as long as I is less than 6, increment I, and then keep doing this. And what's more, so we can go and maybe here change this to a template string so that we can print out I. This is going to go 0 to 5. So well, we can do 1 to less than equal to 6. So that should give us a good, nice print. There you go. So this is the time I'm going to fall asleep. And these are all the, so like if I go to bed right now and I put my alarm at 5:45 a.m., I will be getting a very decent sleep, which is great. So this is more or less what we need. We can do a little bit more here. We can, for example, rather than printing this every time, try to accumulate all of these values and then print them at once. So maybe one thing we can do, we can just drop all of them into an array and then concatenate all of them. Let's try that. So WakeUp Times, put them in. So I'm going to make an empty array. Here, instead of printing each one of them, I'll just push them into that array, and then we can come out and now do one console log, and in this console log we can print the array out. So let's see what happens. So this is the array. We also don't need to calculate the fall asleep, so I can just delete this. And so this is the array, and if you want to convert this to a string, you can do something like .join and tell it to like how to join, like join them with a comma, for example, and run this again. And so now you see this nicely printed out comma separated values for time to sleep. So this is all running sort of outside of the browser. We can now bring it back to the browser. So right now, if I go and refresh this page and I just click on this like calculator, nothing happens. Nothing happens, right? So what I can do is I can go and say something like let's like wrap all of this into a function. So say function, you can call it calc WakeUp Times. All right, and let's go here and put all of this into a function. Maybe we put this in the function too. And then we can go and say what we did last time, which was let's get the button. So calc btn, use document.get element by id, and the id of this button was calc-btn. So we'll put that in here. And then we say this button, if somebody clicked on it, then basically execute this function that we defined up here, right? And so if we refresh the page now and then go and press on calculate, you're gonna see in the terminal that in the console of the browser, all of these values are being printed.